Hi there, students. This is an instructional video that covers two components that relate to the research report that you're writing for Business 310. In this video, we'll talk about secondary research sources and how to manage those sources and begin writing about those sources using an annotated bibliography. So first, just to differentiate a little bit, there's two different types of research that you might do for a research project like this one. And in this video, we're going to focus on secondary research types, which are here on the right-hand side of the screen. Secondary research just means any type of research that uses sources that are developed by other researchers or other authors. Often, this will involve reading and making summaries or using quotations of the findings that other scholars have developed. And then in this video, we'll look specifically at the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook as a specific secondary resource that you might consider using. In a separate video, I'll talk about some of the different ways you can use primary research, which is what's displayed on the left-hand side of the slide here. Primary research just really refers to research that you're collecting yourself. So it's original data that you might collect through methods like an interview or conducting an observation or a survey. So taking a little bit of a deeper dive into secondary research and also the specific source I mentioned, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, we'll say here, I'll put a link to this in Canvas so that you can track it down and find it. This is an ongoing publication. It's produced by a federal government agency, and it's a really nice source because it uses current Bureau of Labor Statistics data to display information about what careers are growing, which careers are slowing, as well as some background information about what various jobs in different industries and sectors looks like. There's a couple of different sections that I'll highlight here and kind of talk about why this could be valuable for this assignment. The first I'll call career profiles. This is actually the language that the website uses. And as I was saying, these include things about different careers. Job descriptions, for example, as well as what kind of education or training would be required to apply for that position and then move forward to be promoted. It also will talk a little bit about what the work is like. What are the day-to-day job duties? What is the work environment? For example, are you working at a desk in an office place, or are you working out at a site or at an industrial factory? Many people are also interested in questions about average salary or pay. And then you might think too, if you're in a position where you're wanting to change careers, what are some similar occupations or careers that either use similar skill sets or rely on similar levels and types of education and training? Alongside the career profiles, this website also includes a really unique resource, and this is called a Job Outlook. As I mentioned, this is from the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, and so they collect data about jobs and labor markets and compile that information to produce these future-oriented projections that state their thoughts about what's going to happen with a particular job or career in the future. And they're typically looking at a 10-year time range. They'll also give reasons for the projections that they develop. So they might, for example, know that some careers will be slowing down because there just isn't as much demand for them. Or there's going to be a rise in other careers because, for example, maybe we're going to see a change in the type of energy source that we're using to power vehicles or our homes. Either way, both parts of this website can be really helpful as you gain information about a particular career track, which really is the focus of this assignment. So keeping in mind that this is a secondary source, like I said, statisticians and economists are the people who went out and gathered the data related here. They're presenting it here to the public, and so if we're using it, it's going to be treated as a secondary source. The web page will look like this screenshot here, and I'll just indicate that the search bar right here is a very valuable resource. You can enter whatever you're looking for. You can also navigate by using the occupation groups or any of these other different navigational tools. They often will get you to the same basic narratives and data sets, but they're just different ways to get the information. So we'll step back for a second and say the resource I was just talking about, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, represents one type of secondary sources. And as you move forward with your report and as a preliminary step drafting your annotated bibliography, keep in mind there's many other different types of sources to use, and provided that you'll need to have 7 sources at least by the end of this project, here's a few ideas about some other secondary sources. So starting on this left-hand column, I'll talk through some of the sources that are maybe more conventionally academic. These would be things like books or websites that are institutionally supported through a university or maybe a governmental institution. Other kinds of corporate websites can also be very credible. Academic journal articles are plentiful in the business world, in finance and economics and others. There's lots of things being published. That's typically what people mean when they talk about, I read a recent study that reported, fill in the blank. It's those kinds of publications. And a really great way to find them is through the library database system. So going to the Broome Library Database or talking with one of the librarians, they'd be happy to help you find any of those sources. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a whole different set of other kinds of secondary sources. These are maybe some you might be more familiar with. They are also readily available. You can use videos from any kind of source, including YouTube. Think too about social media. Right now, there's a lot of things people are saying there. Both with videos and with social media, you'll want to be mindful about the credibility. I use the example here of LinkedIn as a source that for a business report like ours might be more credible. If, for example, you're following the CEO of a company that you find really interesting, you might see something that that person posted on LinkedIn. It could be valuable enough to cite. Other possible sources include podcasts, which can be excellent sources of information. They just require listening and maybe transcribing the key points. You can also look to TV or radio productions, interviews as well. You'll notice that both of these columns include the word others at the end, and that's because the list is not intended to be exhaustive. There are plenty of other different kinds of secondary sources that you can use. So for this assignment, I'll really say open up and take a look to any possible place you can find information, bring it into the conversation, and see what you can make of it. As you're going through the process, I encourage you to also be working on the documentation element. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, it will help you to finish your annotated bibliography more quickly and a little bit more easily if you do it while you're working through the research rather than waiting till the end and trying to pick everything up afterwards. It will also help you to begin developing language for your report itself. And let me explain how. The basic nuts and bolts of the annotated bibliography are this. For the final draft, you'll need to have 7 credible sources in that bibliography. And for the first draft, you'll only need to have 5 of them. You can go beyond that if you want, but those are the numbers to have in mind. Along with each source that you're finding, you'll also want to write out a short annotation for each source that describes what's going on in the source and also why the source is important for your research. Don't worry, I've got an example here in a moment to show you what that looks like. So basically the question you might have at this point is what is included in an annotated bibliography, or really what are the required parts? If you've never done one before, rest assured it's actually a pretty simple formula. There's a lot of words on this slide, but I'll explain that what this is on the right-hand side is an actual annotation and bibliographic entry from a student in Business 310. And on the left, we'll start by saying there's really just 3 simple parts to each entry. The first one is a citation. For this class, use APA format unless there's a really good reason to use a different format. I can provide resources to help you with citation format. And the goal of having a citation is just to leave a trail of where you're gathering your information so that other researchers can look at your work and go find the sources that you've identified. Number 2, the second part here is just a summary of the source. You can be as detailed as you want, but provide at least enough information so that we know what the source is about and really what it looks like. I can say, having spoken with other business school faculty here in the business school, that a skill they think is very important, especially for your senior capstone course, is the ability to read carefully and produce accurate and succinct summaries. So this is good practice in doing that. Looking ahead, I'll say this is the text that you can copy and carry over into your report. The third piece here is the explanation of why the source is relevant to your research. And this can be a long explanation or it can be a brief one. So to help identify this, I've got the same exact citation example here with some color coding. So in this example, it's the same citation. It's a citation about project management careers. The citation is in plain white text at the top. It includes a website where you would be able to find the source. The text that's highlighted in yellow is the summary of the source. And in this case, it's a fairly extensive and detailed summary. Everything that's written in that summary, I think, could be included in the student's report when they're talking about this source. They're basically introducing the reader to say, here is what is in Project Management Career, a complete guide for 2023, this publication. And then finally, the text that's highlighted in blue at the very end is the explanation of relevance. In this case, I'm just going to read it because I think it does a nice job of explaining in its own right why this source is relevant. It says, this article is useful when writing a paper on project managers because it provides a comprehensive overview of the subject and offers insights into the roles, responsibilities, and career opportunities of a project manager. That's really the basic function and format here of a bibliographic entry. This would be one entry. So for this assignment, just repeat this as many times as you need to get up to the required number, either 5 for the first draft or 7 for the final. I'll wrap this video up by just addressing this really kind of overarching question. Why would you use an annotated bibliography? And I've already kind of touched on most of these points. The first one, though, is that it's going to allow you to begin doing some writing while you're doing your research. It's going to help you keep track of the sources that you're looking at, and at the same time also start processing some of your own thoughts about why it's important. As I've said a couple of times, and I can't reinforce enough, the annotations that you write for an annotated bibliography can be reused, in other words, copied and pasted into the body of your report. Stated differently, this is a way for you to get started writing your report without being overwhelmed by the big format of a research report. And finally, the annotations are really a place where you can address any questions about credibility of the sources. And by that, I just mean, are you thinking that a reader might not believe the source or might not think that it's one that we should believe? And if that's the case, use the annotation to preemptively address that concern. All of this taken together, I think, will provide you with a really great tool set so that you can complete the bibliography and then move on to completing your report. If you have questions, let me know. I hope that this information is helpful for you.